Hello friends, welcome back to DIY guitar making. Today I'm going to be prepping a fretboard. I have one of my workshops starting in the beginning of December, which is a little ways from now. I have some time, but it's always good to be prepared ahead of time, and I need to just get one more fretboard prepared for that class. I have one right here for one of the students. So you can see this is the starting point. This is where we start in the class. This is already shaped. By shaped, I mean the taper is cut out and this little shape at the end is also cut out there. But there's no radius on it. It's thick, it's oversized. And then the other thing that is done is these fret slots are cut. So we're gonna do all that today, and I'm gonna have you guys kind of follow along through the process. Now, ordinarily when I do this, I batch out a whole bunch of fretboards all at once. In this case, I'm just doing a one-off, and I think that's a good opportunity to drag you guys along, hopefully not kicking and screaming, to see the whole process. So we're starting out with this piece right here, which is Ebony. I believe it's Macassar Ebony. This other one I just showed you is definitely Macassar Ebony. It has those characteristic caramel streaks throughout. This is a little in the rough right now, so it's hard to see the character in this until we plane it down, and that's going to be the first thing we do. We have to take our blank and plane it down to thickness. This looks like it's already pretty close to the thickness that I want it to start at, so really I just have to pass through the planer a couple times just to clean it up and get rid of the mill marks. You'll notice this is a very long fretboard blank. This is really a fretboard blank that you would purchase from a hardwood supplier for, say, a bass guitar. But I got a really good deal on a bunch of these oversized ones from someone who's getting rid of a bunch of stuff. I don't build bass guitars, so I'm going to be using this for an orchestra model size instrument. And then I'm going to have all this left over here, which will just be great for cutting out heel caps and end wedges and little things like that. Okay, so it's good to have some extra scrap material like that. So we will be doing the power slotting method of cutting our fret slots, which means we're going to be using a template like this. I have my 25.34 inch scale length on this side right here, and on the other side there's a 24.9. That's a short scale. So I got long scale and short scale on the same template here. So that's just nice to have. You can use this for a variety of things. I have a whole bunch of these templates. So here's some more. There's a 25.3 and there's a 24.5, which that 24.5 is what I use on my 13 fret parlor guitars that, if you guys have been following the videos, that you've been seeing. And just so you know, when we do get to the point where we're slotting the frets, I just want to tell you right now, there is a way to do this by hand, and a lot of people like to do that just for the low cost and the simplicity of it. So it's definitely more for garage builders, you know, hobby home builders. You can just get yourself a specialty dovetail saw. So this saw has a 23 thousandths of an inch kerf, right? So the thickness is of these teeth here are 23 thousandths of an inch, which is exactly what you need for your fret tang. This one was from LMI. LMI has gone out of business, which is very sad, but you can buy these similar saws to this from, I believe, Stu Mac, and really if you just search around on Amazon, you'll find something like that, okay? Especially if you type in 23 thousandths of an inch kerf. That'll get you the right thing. Just wanted to make you guys aware of that. Many options here. You don't always have to do things the way I'm showing them. But let's go ahead and dive right into it. We are going to first, like I said, start at the planer and clean up this oversized blank here. All right, let's go. Okay, so I got my planer right here. We're gonna go ahead and open this door and just kick the dust out the back. It's something I've been doing for a little while. And before I start this, I always like to, I got my drum sander right here. Not that I always use the drum sander for this, but I just I have it exposed right now, so I can use it to nip the very corners right there. You can hear my rooster freaking out there. So you nip the corners. It just helps with, as the board is entering into the cutter, it doesn't grab on a 90-degree edge and chip out at that corner. If you don't do it, it's not a terribly destructive problem usually, but hey, it's right here. You can just nip those ends. Not a bad thing to do. And so, raise this up. And I need to get my ear protection for this. Okay, so I've cleaned that most of the way up, and I have a little marking gauge here. I always like to keep a bunch of marking gauges. I have like 20 of them that are all preset to specific parameters that I use all the time. So this one is my fretboard thickness. So it's just grab and go, right? I can grab it off the wall and mark it with this. And I'm right at that fretboard thickness there. So I'm going to go ahead and scribe that on there. But anyway, what I'm going to do now is, since I've cleaned this up most of the way, there's still some mill marks there, I'm going to cut off the excess portion, which I'm going to use for heel caps and end wedges, and then take the remaining piece, which will now be smaller and more in line with the size of our actual, or the length of our actual fretboard, and I'm just going to finish planing off that piece. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and nip that off. You guys don't need to see that. I'm going to do it on the bandsaw. Okay, there we have it. Now I have a smaller length board. I can scribe my final thickness onto here, which really is going to be just a couple thousandths of an inch of removal at this point. Okay. I should mention, just for you guys at home, that when I cut this, I did leave a little bit of extra material still. I didn't cut this straight down to my exact length. One, because I want to leave a little extra for planer snipe. Often you get a little bit of snipe, which is basically a little bit of undercutting of your line on the very ends of whatever length board you're using. So if you leave a little extra, you can essentially account for that. But then also when we cut our slots, as you'll see, I like to leave a little bit of extra area where I can do some test cuts to, check the depth of my table saw blade and all that stuff. All right, so next we're going to cut out the slots. Before we actually cut out the shape of this, we need this to be rectangular so that we have a nice flat square edge for cutting our slots. And the first thing we need to do is get ourselves one edge that is truly flat all across its length. Many ways to do that. I could take this over to the joiner and just do a pass or two through the jointer, or I could sand this on the edge sander or on a belt sander. I could take this over to my shooting board over there and do a couple passes with the plane. Lots of ways to do this, guys. I'm gonna take this over to the shooting board so you guys can see that. Because hand tools are fun. Okay, let's see how we got this set up. It feels like it's sticking out quite a bit. We'll fine tune that. Okay, that looks good. Simple as that, but hey, if your plane isn't tuned up and the sole of your plane isn't flat, then this simple of a job right here actually can be quite frustrating. So keep your tools sharp and keep the relevant surfaces that need to be flat, keep those flat. Good tool maintenance. Okay, so let's get some double stick tape down on here. This is for adhering our template to the board. Okay, and so we're gonna take our template and the board over to the table saw now, because I like to stick the template on there up against the fence, the table saw fence, so that when we place it on there, we can get it nice and flush up against that true surface, that true edge. And you know what, ooh, this is plugged in, unplug that. You know what I really need, guys? I need a dedicated table saw setup just for doing fret slots. It's a pain in the butt to always, every time I slot a fretboard, have to, you know, take the general purpose blade out of my table saw and the riving knife and all that stuff and set up the specialty blade, which you're about to see. And I know a lot of you hobbyists out there watching this right now are like, yeah, cry me a river. It's not a big deal. Just swap it all around. But hey, when you do this full time, all the time, little things like this are kind of a big deal, and I have the space for it. So anyway, this is just me venting out to the world. I think that's going to be on my wish list maybe later this year. Hey, maybe for Christmas. I'll treat myself to a dedicated table saw for fret slotting. That way I don't have to mess with the setup all the time. In fact, this small contractor type table saw that I have right here is actually perfect for that. I would probably buy myself a bigger table saw, because this is tiny, let's be honest, for the more general purpose stuff, and dedicate this. All right, let's do what we got to do here. I'll pull you guys in for a closer look here. Alright, so here we have our specialty blade. This one I got from Stu Mac. And so let me pull this out just to show you a little bit. So it has a 23 thousandths of an inch kerf. As you can see, I've written it on there right there. So it's very thin at the edge. And you know, if the whole blade was 23 thousandths of an inch, it would be way too unstable. It would be kind of floppy, and that would be a serious problem for it. But the way that this works is it's only the very edge that's 23 thousandths of an inch, and that's all you need. And then the interior is much meatier. You know, looks like it's probably a 1/16 of an inch thick, which that gives you your stability for the blade. So now you can kind of get an idea of how this works, right? So we really only want a small amount of the blade sticking up here because we are going to attach our template to the double stick tape, and then using a fence, which I don't have out yet, I'll show you in a minute, press this up against the fence and run this over top of this sort of barely exposed blade here. Now I do still have to set the height for this. And so now to set the depth on this, kind of like you saw before over there, I really like having these dedicated marking gauges just lying around. This one is for my slot depth on my fretboard. And so I always mark them too. It says FB slot depth and 0.125 inch, 125 thousandths of an inch, which by the way is the same as saying an eighth of an inch. And I'm going to go ahead and mark this right onto the edge of my board, and then I'm going to set the table saw height to that height. And what's nice about putting it right on the board is if for some reason, I don't know, my table saw started cutting a little more shallow or too deep part way through the process, I would be able to see it because I have this scribed line all the way across. Man, this this is a little dull actually. The actual cutter, the little score, the bit here that actually scores your workpiece is replaceable. So there's a screw there, you can pop that off and put a new one on there, which is pretty cool. So I might need to do that with this, or I could pop it off and sharpen it, but that's a difficult thing to sharpen. There we go. Okay, I'll set my height to that. Right now I'm kind of just eyeballing it. Then I'm going to do a test cut, and then I'll cut off the slots. Alright, so here's my specialty fence that I made for doing just this job. So it's really just a flat piece of wood that is affixed to two of these, I'm like blanking on the word, whatever you call these things. They come with your table saw. You know, they slot right into the channels here. And so that's all stuck together, and then there's a little pin. When you buy a template from StuMac, or these are from StuMac, that's why I say that, or whoever sells these templates, they usually supply you with this tiny little pin, which you insert into your fence. If you're doing this by hand with a miter box and the dovetail saw, you would use this pin in the miter box. In this case, we're using it on our table saw fence. I'm going to place my fretboard right there and take the backing off the double stick tape. Ah, come on, you little bugger. Now to keep the fretboard flush against the fence while I'm doing this, I like to take a straight edge. It just gives me something to grip onto with my fingers and push against while I'm placing this on there. So I'll show you what I mean. So I just reach my finger around like that and push on the straight edge, which keeps the fretboard flush against the fence while I place. Okay. Give that a good press. The bond between metal and wood with double stick tape is actually really good, or at least the double stick tape that I use. Better than the bond you get with wood to wood, I find. So this template really sticks on there great. Alright, Not a bad idea to just double check. You kind of run your finger along this, and this board feels perfectly flush to the edge of the metal. So that's good. Alright, so there's the pin. I don't know if you guys can see that little pin right there. And so now it's simply a process of indexing in the first fret you want to do. Now I start from the back and move my way towards the first fret, ending at the nut slot, but you could do this either way. The reason why I like to start towards the back, by the way, is I like to use these extra notches way out on the end just to do a test cut or two in order to set my depth. Okay, we set it a moment ago, but we didn't check it, so we don't know for sure that it's at an appropriate depth. Alright, so let's go ahead and make our test cut way down here on what would be the 24th fret. I'm going to get my eyes, I'm going to get my ears, then I'm going to plug the table saw in, and boom, away we go. Okay, that looks like it's a hair deep, just a hair. So I'm going to lower the blade just slightly. And we'll make a second test cut. And that should be good. And then I'm just going to go down the line and cut the rest. Okay. Let's cut some fret slots. And just like that, we've got our fret slots. They're all at the appropriate depth. They're nice and square to that edge that we trued up. That's very important. And we can go ahead and take this off the template now. Very easy to do. I like to use, believe it or not, a fish spatula for removing templates from things. This is one of my favorite tools in the shop, actually. And it's great for grilling fish, of course. So, many uses. Get this nasty double stick tape off of there before it leaves a residue, which it will if you leave it on there too long. And so at this point, I don't need to carry you through the rest of the process here. I'll explain it, how I cut out the shape, but then I'll just turn the camera off and really, you know, get things done in here. Because hey, as much as I like doing this, the camera slows me down a little bit, I'll be honest. So, at this point, what I like to do is just scribe a center line across, and that gives me something to orient my template with. And I'll place my template on there. I'm going to trace out the shape. Gel pen works pretty good here for being able to see the contrast against the dark wood. Then I'm just going to cut out that shape on the bandsaw real close to my lines. Then I can get these long edges on the edge sander. So after I cut it out, those edges will be pretty rough. I can then clean them up and bring them truly down to the gel pen line on the edge sander. And then finally, this part right here, I shape on a robosander, which I have one right here. It's just a drill press attachment. It's essentially like a flush trim router bit, but for abrasive. Right? So this is an abrasive sleeve, this is your bearing. Now if you did use a flush trim router bit back here, it would just be hell on the wood because this is all end grain and it's on a curve. So that's why you want to use something like this. Of course, if you're just doing a simple Martin style fretboard, you're basically just cutting it off at the last fret slot so that it's nice and squared off. Which, by the way, that's what we do at the front end. Simple way to set up the front end is Well, I should say that this first fret slot here, this isn't actually the first fret. This is the nut slot. So you would place your 23 thousandths of an inch kerf saw in here and just cut off this remaining piece. Alright guys, that's all I got for you. I'm going to get to work. I'm going to get shit done. I hope you guys are doing the same, and have a great one. Have a great weekend. Enjoy life. Have fun. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now. If you learned something here, please give this video a like and subscribe so you can be notified when I release a new DIY guitar making video. And if you want to really learn more, take one of my structured online courses at ericschaferguitars.com or register for a hands-on guitar building workshop here with me in Burnville, Pennsylvania.